Welcome back. These notes are for the second half of Unit 2 on migration. Our two essential questions for today are why do people migrate and where are migrants distributed? Before we can talk about migration, we need to go over some vocabulary terms that are associated with migration. There are two different types of migration in which we look at emigration versus immigration. Emigration is when people are leaving a country or they are exiting a country. Immigration is when people are coming into another country or entering. I can always remember the difference between emigration versus immigration because emigration and exit both start with the letter E. They're both leaving or exiting a country. Immigration and in both start with the letter I. This is when people are coming into another country. Our next term is net migration. Net migration is the difference between emigration and immigration. So, if a country has a positive net migration, it means that they have more people coming into that country. If a country has a negative net migration, it means that they have more people emigrating or exiting that country. They have more people leaving. The last terms that we associate with migration are push and pull factors. Push and pull factors are things that cause people to migrate. A push factor are things that force people to leave or push them out of a country. A pull factor are things that attract people or pull them towards entering another country. Question number 1. If a country has a net in migration or a positive net migration, their population is growing. You have more people entering the country than are exiting. When we look at push and pull factors, there are many different things that can be categorized as push and pull factors. You have economic reasons, cultural reasons, and environmental reasons. The economic reasons for push and pull factors have to do with money. Most of the time, people are looking for a better job. Economic reasons are the number one most common factor for somebody either leaving their country or moving to a new country. Cultural reasons are another reason for why people migrate. Forced migration is when people are forced to flee their home country due to political turmoil. This is when people are considered to be refugees. Forced migration or political instability in one's home country is a push factor. It is forcing people to leave. Political conditions can also be determined to be cultural reasons. Political conditions can be either a push factor or a pull factor. Somebody might want to move to a country with more political freedoms. That would be a pull factor. Environmental reasons are also push and pull factors. A pull factor, or what is drawing people to enter another country, could be the desire for more favorable living conditions or more favorable weather patterns. They might be leaving a country due to natural disasters. These would be push factors. So an example is when Hurricane Katrina hit the southern part of the United States, many people in Louisiana and Alabama had to flee their home states. Hurricane Katrina was a push factor. A pull factor for movement and weather could be if you have grandparents or somebody in your family that you know that likes to spend the winters in either Arizona or Florida. Right? The desirable weather conditions, the warm weather, is attracting them or pulling them to leave their home and resettle in those areas. This map shows immigration to Minnesota, so the countries in which people are coming from. You will notice that many immigrants to Minnesota come from a few countries. We have Mexico, China, India, Somalia, and Ethiopia. Those are our 4 largest countries in which immigrants or people are moving to Minnesota. Question number 2. The most common push factor is what? And what is the most common pull factor? The answer is economic for both. Jobs and the desire to make money are the most common push and pull factor. So where are migrants distributed? Areas in which people are leaving are called the sending regions. These are areas such as Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Many people are leaving these areas for a variety of reasons. The receiving regions are areas in which people are coming into. They're immigrating to. Receiving regions are North America, Europe, and Oceania, or Australia and New Zealand. The largest flow of migrants move from Asia to Europe, from Asia to North America, and from Latin America to North America. Currently, the United States has the highest number of foreign-born residents, with around 40 million people not being born in the United States. This map shows the annual net migration. We know that major migration patterns are Asia to Europe, Asia to the United States, and Latin America to the United States. These are the three biggest migration patterns due to proximity. When people are moving from Asia to Europe, they're doing so because of its proximity or its closeness. Asia and Europe are connected to one another, which makes transportation and movement very easy. From Asia to the United States, people are crossing the Pacific Ocean. Again, this makes travel very easy between the two continents. And then from Latin America to the United States, again, Latin America to the United States is based on proximity. Okay? Latin America is very close to the United States, which makes the movement of people easier. This map talks about net migration. You'll notice that all of the kind of reddish, brownish countries have net in migrations, meaning they have more people moving into these countries. The purple countries have net out migrations or negative net migrations. These are countries in which people are leaving. You will notice that parts of Europe and the United States and Canada and Australia and New Zealand have very high net in migrations. These are considered areas which are desirable and people are moving to. Number 3, which of the following is not one of the 3 major international migration flows? The answer is Europe to Asia. People are not moving from Europe to Asia. Instead, they're moving from Asia to Europe. This graph shows the increase in immigrants in the United States since the year 1820. You'll notice that there have been different waves of immigration throughout the history of the United States. The first wave of immigrants came from Northern and Western Europe, peaking in the year 1850. The next wave came from Southern and Eastern Europe around the early 1900s. Then we have World War I that happened right here, so not many people were moving. And then World War II that happened right here, so really a lot of people were not moving. Since World War II, the United States has seen an increase in immigrants from Asia, Latin America, and most recently, Africa. Question number 4. Currently, where are most U.S. immigrants coming from? The answer is Latin America and Asia. So how has illegal or undocumented immigration affected the United States? Currently, the United States has anywhere between 12 to 15 million unauthorized or undocumented immigrants. This number is so broad because these people are undocumented, meaning the government oftentimes doesn't have a way to track their comings and goings. So instead of offering a specific number, we have a range. 80% of unauthorized or undocumented immigrants come from Latin America, and most are seeking employment. 75% of unauthorized or undocumented immigrants are employed in some sort of labor field, whether it be construction, farming, food service, or things like that. Currently, undocumented or unauthorized immigrants make up 5% of the labor force. Unauthorized or undocumented immigration is currently a hot button issue or topic. With the upcoming presidential election, both sides have made policies discussing what they are going to do and how to deal with unauthorized or undocumented immigration. The majority of unauthorized or undocumented immigrants come from Mexico. This is because Mexico and the United States share a very long border. Undocumented or unauthorized immigrants coming from Mexico often do not have to cross a large body of water. Instead, they are just crossing over land, which makes the movement easier. Cuba also has a high migration of undocumented or unauthorized immigrants, again, due to its close proximity to the United States. Cuba is only 90 miles off the coast from Florida. This map shows the undocumented immigrants by state. You will notice that California, Texas, and Florida all have a large percentage of undocumented immigrants. These three states have high labor fields or labor forces in which undocumented immigrants can easily work. Spanish is also fluently spoken in all of these areas, which makes it easier for undocumented immigrants to assimilate into culture. So, when people move to the United States, where are they settling? A lot of times, immigrants settle based on proximity to their home country. So, people that are coming from Latin America are more likely to settle in the southern part of the United States. Customs and cultures and language are going to be similar from which they left behind. Immigrants that are coming from Asia are more likely to settle along the Pacific coast due to the West Coast proximity to Asia. It's the closest part of the United States. All throughout California, Oregon, and Washington, large cities have small areas in which immigrant populations live. Many of these areas are called Chinatown, and this is areas in which immigrants can go to find familiar settings such as language and food. Economics also play an important aspect of where immigrants settle. The South and the Western parts of the United States have more job opportunities for recent immigrants. Therefore, immigrants are going to settle in these areas because they are more likely to find immediate employment. Immigrants are also likely to settle in larger areas versus rural areas. Cities such as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles all have large immigrant populations. In fact, if you go to these large cities, they have different boroughs or neighborhoods that represent their different migrant cultures. For example, in New York, you can go to Little Italy. You can also go to Chinatown. In these areas, you will find food and customs and language that are representative of the countries in which the people came from. Finally, immigrants settle on a location based on something that's called chain migration. Chain migration is where new immigrants are going to settle where there have already been established cultural and family communities. For example, recent immigrants to Minnesota from Somalia are more likely to settle in Minneapolis because of the chain migration that already exists. Minneapolis has a large Somali community. Therefore, cultural and family communities and traditions have already been established. Recent Somali immigrants are more likely to settle in this area to feel a connection closer to people that share their same values. This map shows a map of Minneapolis and St. Paul. The darker the neighborhoods or the darker the areas are the higher percentage of Hmong population. Notice that St. Paul has a higher Hmong population than Minneapolis. This is due to an already established Hmong presence in St. Paul. This is another map that shows Hmong residents in the Minneapolis and St. Paul area. This represents Minneapolis, and this represents St. Paul. You can see that There are clustered communities of Hmong residents in the cities compared to the outer ring suburbs. This is another map that shows the percentage of total population in Minneapolis and St. Paul of Hispanic residents. Again, Minneapolis and St. Paul both have a high population of Hispanic immigrants, but St. Paul, specifically the southern part of St. Paul, south of the river, has a higher Hispanic population. Okay. This map shows the presence of Latino residents in and around the Minneapolis and St. Paul area. Again, you can see that there are population clusters throughout the Twin Cities area. Question number 5. When immigrants are more likely to settle near recent immigrants from their same cultural group, we call this chain migration. So how does the United States view different immigrant groups? Well, when people apply for legal immigration to the United States, they are oftentimes given a preference for admission. They have to fill out a form, they have to meet at the United States consulate and apply for a visa. Then their information is weighed based on these factors. If somebody is looking to come to the United States to be reunified with their family, they are placed on a higher priority list. People that are refugees are also placed on a higher priority list. Refugee workers may lead to something called a brain drain. This is where a country will experience a loss of skilled workers due to political or government instability. And in a brain drain, skilled workers choose to leave that politically unstable country and instead emigrate to a more successful country. Currently, the average wait time in the United States to get your immigrant visa approved is 5 years. Recent migration status has been put on hold thanks to the current coronavirus. As of right now, the United States is not offering any immigrant visas unless there is extenuating circumstances. The United States also has something that's called quota laws. That means that each year, countries are given a specific quota or a number of immigrants that are accepted from those countries. Once that quota has been met, no more people from that country can be admitted to the United States that year. However, there are exceptions to these quota laws. One of them is when people are a refugee, meaning they are fleeing political or conflict turmoil in their home country, or if that person is a family of a U.S. citizen. They do not apply to the quota law. Question number 6. An immigrant is more likely to be admitted to the United States if the answer is all of the above. If they are a refugee, if they are a skilled laborer, meaning they have some sort of specific job capabilities, and that they already have family in the United States. What patterns of internal migration exist in the United States? So where are people moving within our country? You have the growth of the southern part of the United States from roughly 1950 to 2000. This is when manufacturing and industry started to move away from the Rust Belt in the northeastern part of the United States to the Sun Belt in the southern part of the United States. Then you also have the growth of the western part of the United States from 1950 to present. This was caused by advances in technology in Silicon Valley out in California really booming. People also have a desire for large lots and high-paying jobs. The further west you go, except for California, the more space there is to spread out and the larger pieces of land are available. Also, tech jobs, specifically in Silicon Valley, offer high-paying rates compared to jobs on the East Coast. So people are incentivized by their income to move west. And this trend is currently growing, where we see more and more people from the East Coast in the central part of the United States moving westward. As the United States has grown over the years, our center of population has shifted westward. So in 1970, the center of the United States population was along the East Coast. And as time went on, the center of our population has moved further and further west. Currently, the center of the United States population is about in the middle of the United States. This map shows the net migration based on counties. So the red areas are areas in which people are moving to, and the purple bluish areas are areas in which people are moving from. So if you notice, the southern part of the United States and then the western part of the United States has higher net in-migrations. These are areas in which people are moving to. Again, people are moving away from the Rust Belt in the northeastern part of the United States and instead focusing on the Sun Belt, or the southern part of the United States. These are also maps that show internal migration in the United States. In 1995, a lot of people were moving around the United States. But then in 2010, migration had slowed dramatically. This was largely in part due to the housing market crash and the stock market instability in 2008, in which a lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people lost a lot of money. So it really brought internal migration to a standstill. Right? If we looked at 2010 to currently 2020 migration, you would see that as of 2020, migration within the United States is almost zero, and that's due to the current ongoing pandemic. People just aren't leaving anywhere. The last thing that we are going to talk about is this process called urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is just the continued growth of cities and the suburbs. In fact, urban sprawl is where you have suburban growth that begins to spill over from the cities, and in which you really can't see an end between one suburb to the next. They all just kind of blend together. So kind of like Woodbury to Cottage Grove. We don't really know where the line is that ends Woodbury and starts Cottage Grove. Question number 7. The center of population in the United States is shifting in which direction? It's shifting west and south. Question number 8. Urban to suburban is the most common internal migration trend in the United States. That answer is true. People are moving away from the big cities and instead focusing on the suburbs. This is where we get the idea of urban sprawl, or massive suburb growth, right? Just look at the population of Cottage Grove and Woodbury. It has grown dramatically in your lifetime. Okay, this is the end of the notes. What you are going to do is you are going to answer these 2 summary questions. Why do people migrate? So what are the push and pull factors that drive people to leave or enter a country? And then where are migrants distributed? Where are people migrating to? What are our major migration clusters? Don't forget to turn in your notes with a completed summary when you are finished.